Debbie, you're a hooker. I don't believe it.
The 1980s gave us a specific breed of comedy that operated under one simple rule. If you could film it before someone filed a lawsuit, it was fair game. While studios churned out wholesome family entertainment for the masses, a parallel industry thrived on pushing boundaries so far past acceptable that modern audiences watch these films with genuine disbelief, wondering how anyone greenlit scripts that would get producers arrested today. Revenge of the Nerds turned systematic sexual harassment into a triumphant underdog story, grossing over $40 million in 1984, while audiences cheered behavior that now defines the film's toxic legacy. Lewis and Gilbert get forced into the gymnasium after Alpha Beta jocks burn down their house, leading the outcasts to form their own fraternity and wage war using their superior intellect to win the Greek games.
But the only way to become president is to win the homecoming carnival.
That's right, Arnold. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Robert Carradine went method by attending actual Rush Week at the University of Arizona in full nerd costume, and every single fraternity on campus rejected him, giving him genuine experience of being blacklisted by the culture the film sought to satirize. Turns out, the University of Arizona administration was so horrified by the final cut, they banned the production from ever returning, having originally agreed under the impression it was a serious look at collegiate life. The film's legacy is now defined by the mask scene, where Lewis deceives Betty into sex by impersonating her boyfriend, directly causing the collapse of a $20 million remake in 2006, when modern audiences pointed out what 80s viewers somehow missed, establishing the template for how the decade's biggest comedies could thrive on premises that today would get you arrested. Bachelor Party existed because producer Bob Israel threw an actual party, so legally precarious that the guests decided to turn it into a movie, which is the kind of decision-making process that explains a lot about 80s cinema. Rick is a school bus driver settling down with his wealthy girlfriend, but his friends throw him the ultimate bachelor party while her disapproving father hires her ex-boyfriend to sabotage everything, leading to chaos involving a drug-addicted donkey and expensive prostitutes.
Hey, bro, what it be?
You're a pimp? You look like Gandhi.
Hanks was actually the first choice for the role, though the studio almost fired him mid-production because they thought he was too nice for a raunchy comedy. Meanwhile, Monique Gabrielle, who played stripper Tracy, was cast specifically because she was a Penthouse playmate, but despite stealing scenes with genuine comedic timing, the Penthouse stigma pigeonholed her into B-movie scream queen roles. Tawny Kitaen won the female lead, bringing a new wave sex symbol status that launched her to become the definitive video vixen of the 80s and Whitesnake's iconic music videos, though the success was bittersweet as her real life became tabloid chaos. The film pulled in $38.4 million on the promise of bachelor party chaos, but weirdly enough delivered a genuine lesson about staying faithful despite the excess, which is the kind of moral backbone you wouldn't expect from a movie marketed entirely on strippers and debauchery.
Disgusting. Girls, let's get out of here.
Mischief became Kelly Preston's breakthrough and her curse simultaneously, with marketing so focused on her status as the hot girl that she spent years fighting the bikini girl label even as she built a steady career. Set in 1956 Nelsonville, Ohio, shy Jonathan attempts to lose his virginity and win girl Marilyn's heart before graduation with help from cool rebel Jean, who teaches him the art of pursuing women through classic 50s misadventures. The film was marketed as Porky's Light, banking entirely on nostalgia and teenage sexuality to sell tickets, which worked for the box office but destroyed any credibility the film might have had with prestige filmmakers. While Preston went on to appear in Space Camp, Twins, and The Experts, constantly working through the typecasting, her co-star Doug McKeon essentially disappeared from A-list cinema after this film. The film opened to a dismal $2.6 million, after one major critic described it as if Norman Rockwell wanted to make Porky's, forcing Preston to spend the next decade clawing her way out of the hot girl box that this single film created, a label that stuck for 11 years before Jerry Maguire's Avery Bishop became one of the first serious roles anyone would let her play.
You okay, Jonathan?
Just a cramp.
Hot Dog the movie paid professional skiers $30,000 per day to perform stunts so dangerous they'd been banned after a fatal accident, and several stuntmen being blacklisted from insurance coverage for years remains the most surprising outcome. Harkin Banks heads to Squaw Valley for the World Freestyle Ski Championships, where the professional skiing world revolves around wild parties and sexual conquests, as much as athletic skill battling arrogant Austrian champion Rudy before everything culminates in a no-holds-barred Chinese downhill race. World-class freestyle veterans were paid $30,000 for a single day, performing multiple backflips in barely controlled conditions, and one stuntman reportedly broke both legs in a crash that was kept in the final cut. On a tiny $2 million budget, the film grossed over $17.5 million, making it the highest-grossing ski movie of all time, a record that stands because no modern production can legally afford the death-defying liability of those unscripted mountain stunts. By the time filming wrapped, the ski resort actually banned the production from returning, setting the precedent that sexploitation could work in any genre, as long as studios were willing to burn every professional bridge and ignore basic safety standards.
Son of a bitch! You!
I saw you fall. Thought I'd just stop and give you a few pointers.
Where the Boys Are 84 marked the end of an era, with producer Alan Carr coming off the disaster of Can't Stop the Music, and desperately trying to revive the beach party genre one last time. 4 college co-eds embark on a Fort Lauderdale spring break pilgrimage looking for sun and potential boyfriends, navigating rowdy fraternity boys and wet t-shirt contests while dealing with various romantic misunderstandings that ultimately strengthen their friendship.
Carol and Jeff won second place in this hot bod contest, $150.
But the bad news is, we only have enough money to get one of you out.
The film earned a weighted average score of just 10 out of 100 on Metacritic. And after Lynn Holly Johnson's Worst Supporting Actress Razzie win, her career took a devastating hit as she transitioned from Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only to low-budget horror movies in the woods, the kind of slow professional death where you're still technically working, but everyone including you knows it's over. Turns out the film's $10.5 million failure was the final nail in the coffin for the golden age of beach party movies, with audiences having moved on from the innocent spring break formula that had worked for decades, leaving Johnson as the cautionary tale for what happens when you follow a Bond girl role with the wrong beach movie sequel. The Hollywood Nights gave Michelle Pfeiffer her film debut in a thankless role, and watching her go from wearing a garish Tubby's waitress outfit to becoming one of cinema's biggest stars proves talent can overcome terrible first impressions. On Halloween 1965, the Hollywood Nights car club tears through Beverly Hills for one last night of hell-raising before their favorite hangout gets demolished, with leader Newbomb Turk engaging in escalating pranks while Duke and Susie Q face a crossroads as she dreams of an acting career.
That's what pisses you off, isn't it? That I might become somebody.
Think you're somebody right now?
Pfeiffer was cast primarily for her blonde bombshell looks. To contrast with the film's slob humor, paid a minimal fee for a part that required her to mostly look worried in a waitress uniform. Weirdly enough, the teenage members of the Hollywood Nights were actually grown men, with Robert Wool and Tony Danza both in their late 20s during filming, but most egregious was one actor playing a high school student despite being 33 years old. The 1957 Chevy Bel Air driven by Danza and Pfeiffer wasn't just a prop, but one of the most famous cars in automotive journalism history, known as Project X, though even automotive legend couldn't save the film from being dismissed as lowbrow trash that somehow launched Pfeiffer's career, in spite of itself. Private School transformed Phoebe Cates and Betsy Russell into a market-tested commodity, and both actors spent years trying to escape the damage this clinical approach inflicted on their careers. Christine is a student at an exclusive all-girls academy who falls for Jim from the rival military academy, but manipulative rival Jordan wants Jim for herself, forcing Christine to sneak out for various sexual escapades and comedic misunderstandings.
I never meant for this to happen.
Is that you?
Universal bet everything on Cates, by predicting the film would gross $30 million based on her Fast Times fame, though when it earned only $14 million, it became painfully clear that making one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses the most forgettable good girl was a terrible miscalculation. Meanwhile, Betsy Russell, who played Jordan, became a viral sensation for the topless horse ride scene, reportedly filming that sequence over 20 times in front of a live crowd of extras, a humiliation that led her to distance herself from the teen sex genre and get pigeonholed into B-movie scream queen roles for years. The $3.5 million production marked Paula Abdul's first film credit as choreographer, launching her from a prep school set to global pop superstardom, making her the only winner in this financial mess, while Cates walked away from Hollywood entirely, having learned that sometimes the only way to win was refusing to play. The Wild Life became Cameron Crowe's painful learning experience, a film he openly admits was a disaster that forced him to rethink his entire approach to screenwriting. Bill moves into his first apartment with roommate Tommy, a hard-partying wrestler who treats the place like a 24-hour rager, while the group navigates strip club brawls and awkward breakups before a massive house party serves as their chaotic goodbye to adolescence. Crowe described the film as a misfire in an aggressive attempt to avoid making a Fast Times sequel, creating something that felt exploitative and vapid, though the setback actually led him straight to James L. Brooks, who would produce Say Anything and Almost Famous years later. Universal marketed Chris Penn as the new Spicoli in a Fast Times sequel and all but name, but the film's $11 million gross hurt Penn because he was playing a tough guy version of a character audiences wanted to be funny. Turns out, the real tragedy is Eddie Van Halen's experimental score recorded at his 5,150 studio, an incredible piece of work that the studio replaced with generic tracks and has never been properly released due to rights issues, making the film less a comedy failure and more a lost artifact of what 80s rock soundtracks could have been.
Why don't you just go blow? I mean, you make me nauseous.
High school girls. I should have known better.
Dr. Detroit was Dan Aykroyd's grief-fueled attempt to carry a film alone after John Belushi's death, and it nearly killed his solo career before Ghostbusters saved him. Clifford Skridlow is a stuffy literature professor whose world implodes when flamboyant pimp Smoothwalker convinces him to pose as Dr. Detroit, a mythical high-rolling pimp, leading Clifford to outsmart professional criminals before leading an army of ladies in a showdown at a lavish players' ball. The script was based on a short story, and while it wasn't written as a Blues Brothers vehicle, Aykroyd threw himself into the performance to cope with his grief. You could see him searching for a new identity on screen while haunted by his partner's absence, turning what should have been a comedy into something closer to a public breakdown with punchlines. Universal marketed the film as the major hit of summer 1983, though the $10.8 million gross felt like a stalling point for supporting actors like Fran Drescher, who later wrote that the failure taught her Hollywood would only ever cast her as a bimbo or a hooker, eventually motivating her to create the nanny herself.
Boy, we're having some nice affair here. Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Fine, but I'm really worried about the meal, Karen.
Wait till you see the entertainment.
Zapped got transformed from a tame PG science comedy into sleazy exploitation after Porky's made $100 million, and the studio's panic-driven reshoots created a film so inconsistent that Scott Baio's hair length changes between scenes. Barney develops telekinetic abilities after a freak lab accident, leading his horny best friend to convince him to use these powers for everything from winning baseball games to rigging prom before a chaotic finale leaves the student body exposed.
Why should I go out with you?
Well, I'm pretty rich, pretty famous, and pretty powerful.
The film was originally shot as a relatively tame PG-rated sci-fi story, but while in post-production, Porky's became a massive sensation and the studio immediately ordered reshoots to add nudity and adult humor. This created jarring inconsistencies, as Baio's hair length noticeably changes because reshoots occurred months later, a perfect visual tell of a disaster production. Meanwhile, Heather Thomas explicitly refused to film nude scenes, but the studio bypassed her refusal by allegedly superimposing her head onto a nude body double, outraging Thomas so completely she filed a formal complaint with the Screen Actors Guild in a landmark case for actor privacy. The $16.8 million gross marked the absolute peak of Scott's teen idol status, with the hormonal comedy genre he helped build becoming the very cage that trapped him, a pattern that would repeat itself with dozens of young actors who discovered too late that overnight success in raunchy comedies rarely translated into lasting careers. Blame It on Rio stands as one of the decade's most uncomfortable films, with Michael Caine spending the next 40 years trying to explain why he signed on to play a middle-aged man having an affair with his best friend's 17-year-old daughter, which is the kind of career choice that haunts you at every interview forever. Matthew and Victor head to Rio with their teenage daughters, and when Matthew's wife bails, he succumbs to Jennifer's flirtation, leading to a secret affair where Matthew has to help Victor hunt down the pervert seducing his daughter, which is himself.
We did say Rio, didn't we?
We did.
Then what the hell is in Bahia?
Not me. That's the big attraction.
That's not fair.
The director was so committed to casting Michelle Johnson as Jennifer that the production had to obtain a court order allowing a minor to appear topless on camera, bypassing standard child labor protections in one of the creepiest legal loopholes in 80s Hollywood history. Johnson was only 17 during filming, and the $18 million success turned her into a household name for the wrong reasons, immediately typecast as trash, and spending the rest of her career in straight-to-video skin flicks, discovering that being sexualized as a minor was great for one paycheck, but career poison for life. Demi Moore took a different approach, using the film as a tactical stepping stone while the paycheck funded her sobriety and pivot into the Brat Pack inner circle, demonstrating that surviving toxic productions required recognizing when to cash out and move on before the damage became permanent. Joysticks pitched itself as a movie about video game culture, but was actually just an excuse to film women playing Pac-Man topless, shot in 13 days on $300,000 at a real arcade in Los Angeles. Jefferson Bailey manages a local arcade that draws the fury of wealthy businessman Joseph Rutter, who believes video games are corrupting youth and vows to shut it down before everything gets decided by a high-stakes Super Pac-Man tournament. The director got the idea after noticing teenagers huddled around arcade machines during a test screening and decided on the spot to make an R-rated video game sex comedy, shooting the entire thing in under 2 weeks with almost no rehearsal. The production was filmed at the Family Amusement Center in LA, using real teenagers as extras, which would be a labor law nightmare today given the R-rated content being filmed around minors. Turns out the film featured a custom arcade cabinet called Streaker, where a digital woman removed her clothes as players scored points, exploiting the arcade boom by combining it with the only thing studios thought sold better than Pac-Man, which was nudity. The ultimate quickie miracle grossed nearly $4 million on its pathetic $300,000 budget, establishing the low-budget formula that would define exploitation cinema for the rest of the decade: find a trending topic, add nudity, shoot fast, and cash out before anyone notices the quality or lack thereof. Private Lessons turned a 15-year-old boy losing his virginity to his 30-year-old housekeeper into the most profitable independent comedy of 1981. And the fact that nobody went to prison somehow became the least shocking part of the story. Philip gets left alone in his mansion when his wealthy mother goes on vacation, and she hires Nicole, a sophisticated French housekeeper played by Sylvia Christel, who immediately begins seducing the kid under the guise of teaching him about life before her boyfriend shows up to blackmail the family. The film cost just $2.8 million to produce, but grossed a staggering $50 million worldwide by marketing itself almost entirely on moral outrage, with child advocacy groups condemning it and conservative markets banning it outright, which meant curious audiences flooded theaters to see what the fuss was about. Eric Brown, who played Philip, was genuinely 15 years old during filming of the sex scenes with the 29-year-old Crystal. And while the production technically skirted child labor laws by using careful framing and body doubles, Brown later described the experience as confusing and overwhelming. The power dynamics on set were heavily skewed toward adult producers who wanted to push the R rating as far as legally possible, which wasn't unique to Private Lessons, but rather the blueprint for these films in general, all operating under one unspoken rule: push boundaries first, deal with consequences later, and cash out before anyone sues, which is exactly why the 80s remain one of the wildest eras of comedy Hollywood ever produced.